When can we expect Melly to come home?
May.
Jamie Demons King, YNW, Melly's mom, just announced that Melly is coming home and the internet has not recovered. We're going to look at exactly what is happening in Melly's case right now and whether those two words mean what everyone is hoping they mean. The announcement that broke the internet.
With this, Melly's goose is kind of cooked.
That right there. That was a criminal lawyer reacting to Bortland's plea deal just months ago. A man who'd been in that car. A man who knew everything. A man who finally folded. And yet somehow, someway, on April 15th, 2026, a single Instagram story from one woman changed the entire mood of the internet overnight. Just a post, just a few words, and the entire rap world lost its mind. That woman was Jamie Demons King, YNW Melly's mother. And what she wrote was simple. Devastatingly simple. Melly coming. That her son was coming home soon. Now, before you run with that, let's slow this down because the story of how we got to this moment, a mother posting those two words on Instagram in April 2026, is not simple at all. It is the story of 7 years of silence, 7 years of suffering, 7 years of a young man rotting in a Broward County jail cell without a conviction, without a guilty verdict, without a sentence, just held. And to understand why those two words hit so differently, you need to understand everything that came before them. Jamal Morris Demons was born on May 1st, 1999 in Ford, Florida. He was raised by a single mother who was only 14 years old when she had him. Let that sink in. 14. A child raising a child in poverty in one of the rougher pockets of Florida. His father was absent. The family moved around. Stability was a foreign concept. And by the time Jamal was old enough to understand the world around him, the streets had already started doing the teaching. He joined the Bloods gang young. His first arrest came when he was just 15 or 16 years old. He was caught shooting at 3 students near Vero Beach High School, resulting in convictions for aggravated battery, discharging a firearm in public, and aggravated assault. He served roughly a year in juvenile detention. And then in 2017, a probation violation sent him right back. But here's what's remarkable. While he was locked up, while most kids that age are just trying to survive the conditions of incarceration, Jamal Demons was recording music. He dropped an EP called Collect Call in late 2017, literally from behind bars. He was already becoming YNW Melly. When he got out in March 2018, he didn't waste a single second. A string of singles dropped in rapid succession. Virtual Blue Balenciagas, Melly the Menace, Butter Pecan, Medium Fries. Videos racked up tens of millions of views. His debut mixtape, IAMU, dropped in August 2018. And then came the song that changed everything, Murder on My Mind. It peaked at number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100. It went 8 times platinum. It drove his signing to 300 Entertainment. It made him one of the fastest rising artists in all of rap. A melodic, emotional, street-certified voice out of Florida that sounded like nothing else. By early 2019, he had over 200 million Spotify streams and 10 million monthly listeners, positioning him alongside peers like Juice WRLD and Kodak Black as one of rap's hottest emerging acts. And then on October 26, 2018, while all of that was still building, while the rocket was still climbing, something happened in Miramar, Florida, that would end everything. Anthony DeAndre Williams, stage name YNW Sackchaser, age 21, and Christopher Jermaine Thomas Jr., stage name YNW Juvie, age 19, were shot and killed. Both of them were members of the YNW Collective. Both of them were Melly's friends, his brothers, his people. The 4 people in that vehicle that night were Melly Bortland, who was driving, Sackchaser in the front passenger seat, and Juvie in the rear passenger seat. Sackchaser was shot multiple times in the head, torso, and legs. Juvie was shot multiple times in the head and torso. 8 shots total, fired from a .40 caliber handgun. Bortland drove the victims to Memorial Hospital Miramar and told police they had been ambushed in a drive-by shooting by an unknown vehicle. A story, a cover, a lie, according to investigators, that began unraveling almost immediately. Here's what the interrogation from that night reveals.
I was playing music, getting off the exit. I was already getting sleepy, almost home.
That was Bortland, audio only, speaking to homicide detectives hours after the shooting, explaining what he claimed happened.
You know what I'm saying? And like just out of nowhere, like I just heard gunshots, you know what I'm saying? So, and I ducked down.
But detectives weren't buying it. They shut down the entire area. Officers walked it shoulder to shoulder and they found nothing. Not one shell casing, not one piece of broken glass, nothing that supported the Drive-A-Bee story at the supposed location.
Here's the hard part where we're having a hard time to understand is that
We shut down that entire area, and we had officers shoulder to shoulder walk it out.
The detective keeps pressing.
They didn't find as much as one shell casing. They didn't find one piece of glass, nothing.
Because here is what the forensic evidence actually showed. All projectiles originated from inside the Jeep, primarily from the left rear area where Melly was seated. The drive-by story wasn't just weak, it was physically impossible. The wounds on the victims contradicted it entirely. A spent shell casing was found bagged in the Jeep itself, suggesting a cleanup attempt had already been made. And then there were the messages. Hours after the murders, when asked on Instagram DM how he was holding up, Melly allegedly replied, "I did that," and shell messages praised Bortland's loyalty and referenced the incident. On February 13, 2019, both Melly and Bortland were arrested on 2 counts each of first-degree premeditated murder. Melly was 19 years old, and from that day forward, he has not seen the outside of a Broward County jail cell. Not for a day, not for a week, not for a month, for 7 years. The prosecutor's theory was that Melly was the shooter. That the motive was a combination of financial disputes, the victims were reportedly earning more and distancing themselves, and gang advancement, specifically alleged elevation in the G-Shine Bloods set by committing murder. Bortland's role, they argued, was to help stage the drive-by, lie to police, and assist in the cover-up. Both men pleaded not guilty. The first trial finally came in June 2023, nearly 5 years after the arrest. Prosecutors originally sought the death penalty. Weeks of testimony, forensic experts, ballistics, and then a hung jury. Reports indicated the split was roughly 9-3, favoring conviction on lesser manslaughter charges. A mistrial was declared on July 22, 2023. Melly had survived the first round, but he was still behind bars. The retrial got delayed and delayed again. Evidence disputes, defense motions, prosecution appeals. Each time there was a new court date, it collapsed into another postponement. In August 2025, the retrial was pushed all the way back to January 2027, nearly 8 full years after his arrest. So when Jamie Demons King posted those words on April 15, 2026, Melly coming, it wasn't coming out of nowhere. Something had been building. Something had shifted. And a mother who had been watching her son waste away in a cell for over 7 years finally felt like she could say it. But what exactly was she reacting to? What had changed? And is this real or just another cruel tease in a case that has broken hearts repeatedly? That's what we need to get into next. The case begins to crack. To understand why a mother's Instagram story could move the internet the way it did, you have to understand what has been happening in the legal machinery of this case over the past 12 months. Because this is not just hope and emotion. There have been actual concrete structural developments in Jamal Demon's case. Developments that, for the first time in years, have opened a real door toward freedom. Let's go back to September 9, 2025, the day before Bortland's trial was scheduled to begin. Cortland Malik Henry, YNW, Bortland, did something that shocked everybody who had been following this case. He took a deal. On September 9, 2025, just 1 day before his own trial was set to begin, Bortland accepted a plea deal in the Broward County double murder case. This was a man who had been standing 10 toes down for years. A man who had been charged with the same murders as Melly. A man who for 6+ years had refused to break. Even as the pressure mounted, even as the charges stacked up, even as the prosecution threw everything at him, trying to get him to flip. And then 1 day before his trial, he folded. Here is what the deal looked like. Bortland pleaded no contest to 2 counts of accessory after the fact to first-degree murder, as well as 2 related charges from a 2023 witness tampering investigation. In exchange, the state dropped the murder charges entirely. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison, followed by 6 years of probation with credit for the over 2,400 days he had already served. His effective remaining prison time was around 3.5 years, with a projected release date of January 6, 2032. But it wasn't just the sentence. There was something else buried in the deal that the legal community immediately zeroed in on. A proffer. Bortland had agreed as part of the negotiated resolution to sit down with prosecutors and provide them with a detailed, truthful account of everything he knew. And criminal lawyer Bruce Rivers, reacting to the news in real time, didn't mince words.
He's taken a deal where he's getting, 10 years in, 6 years on probation. He's already got 7 in.
Rivers continued breaking down the math of what Bortland had gained versus what he was risking.
Might do a couple more years, depending upon how Florida works their system.
That was the individual calculation for Bortland. But what did it mean for Melly? Rivers didn't hesitate. An academics who spent over an hour breaking down every dimension of the plea deal in a live stream explained why he kept calling it a gun plea, referencing the infamous Young Thug Rico case. The argument was straightforward. When you plead guilty to accessory after the fact of murder, you are by definition acknowledging that a murder took place, and you are by definition acknowledging that you assisted someone connected to that murder. So even without Bortland standing up on a witness stand and pointing at Melly, his plea itself tells a story.
Now, let me make this very clear. Because you take a proffer doesn't mean you cooperated. But if you cooperated, you have to take a proffer.
The judge made it plain during the hearing itself. The deal was struck. The proffer was required. And here is what the judge said directly to Portland about what that meant.
I do want to have a quick conversation with Mr. Henry. I'm going to put him under oath.
Then came the charges read aloud one by one. Life sentence after life sentence stacked on top of each other. The weight of what Portland had been facing made the deal not just understandable, but almost inevitable.
Life in Florida State Prison, followed by life in Florida State Prison, followed by life in Florida State Prison, followed by life in Florida State Prison.
4 life sentences plus 75 years before the deal. That was Portland's maximum exposure. And when you're staring down 4 lifetimes in a Florida state prison, a 10-year sentence with credit for 6.5 years already served starts looking very different.
And like the judge said, a judge does not have any discretion. 0.
The deal was taken. The proffer was signed. And then within weeks, something started happening on Melly's side of the legal equation that nobody quite expected. In January 2026, prosecutors moved to dismiss several of the charges against Melly himself. Specifically, they dismissed witness tampering, gang-related, and solicitation counts. Melly's new legal team, Drew Finling and Carol Hofwout, called these dismissals significant. They argued these were not minor technicalities. They were, in the words of the defense, no crimes. And they used these dismissals as the foundation of a new push, a push to get their client out of that jail cell. In March 2026, Melly's attorneys filed a formal motion for pretrial release. An Arthur hearing, the Florida legal mechanism for challenging detention in capital cases, was requested. The filing cited new evidence. It cited what the defense described as flagrantly restrictive, dehumanizing jail conditions. It represented Melly's 4th bid for bond in the entire history of this case. Think about that. 4 attempts to get this man released while awaiting trial. 4 times denied. Then on March 31, 2026, Melly was called to appear for a status hearing. He refused to appear in court. Whether that was a legal strategy, a protest against his conditions, or simply a man who had given up on these incremental appearances, the judge didn't pause. He set a new date, April 30th, 2026, 9:30 a.m. before Judge Martin S. Fine. That date was set for arguments on the bond hearing and all pending motions. If the judge grants it, Melly could potentially walk out of Broward County Jail on strict conditions, house arrest, monitoring, the whole structure. If the judge denies it, he stays locked up until the January 2027 retrial. And it was this April 30th date sitting right around the corner that was the backdrop when Jamie Demons King picked up her phone and posted those words on April 15th, 2026. Now, here is where people need to understand something important. The viral claim being spread that Melly's mom officially announced his release is not accurate. What she posted was a vague, hopeful hint. There was no date, no confirmation, no legal document attached, no statement from the defense team. Just the energy of a mother who for the first time in a long time felt like something real was on the horizon. Outlets like Hot New Hip Hop and Hot 97 reported it as a hint or tease, not a confirmation. Social media amplified it into a headline, and now here we are. But here's the thing, and this is what matters. The conditions for that hope to be real are genuinely there in a way they haven't been before. The charges that were dropped in January represent a weakening of the state's overall case against him. The new legal team, Findling, is one of the most prominent criminal defense attorneys in the country, represents a serious recalibration of his defense strategy, and the April 30th hearing represents the first real formal opportunity since the mistrial for a judge to look at this case, look at how long this man has been held, and ask whether continued pretrial detention is actually justified. In October 2025, the 4th District Court of Appeal upheld the exclusion of certain pre-murder text messages, a ruling that could meaningfully limit what prosecutors can present at retrial. In a prior lawsuit filed in November 2024, Melly sued the Broward Sheriff's Office, alleging cruel treatment and seeking immediate release, over 2,800 days in custody without a conviction. The math is brutal. The momentum is real. And a mother who has watched all of it, every motion, every delay, every denied bond request, finally felt like she could say it out loud. But what does the street say? What do the people who have been tracking this since 2019 actually think is going to happen next? And what has Bortland's cooperation actually done to Melly's chances in the courtroom and beyond? What happens next and why it matters? Here is the uncomfortable truth about where Jamal Demon stands right now. He is simultaneously in the best legal position he has occupied since his 2019 arrest and still facing the possibility of spending the rest of his life in a Florida state prison. Both of those things are true at the same time, and understanding how that is possible requires looking at everything from the forensics to the loyalty to the culture war that this case has quietly become. Let's start with the forensic picture because it is the spine of the prosecution's case and it is what Melly's new lawyers have to defeat. All 8 shots fired that night came from inside the vehicle. Trajectory analysis placed the shooter in Melly's seat. A spent shell casing was found bagged in the Jeep. One of the victims had stippling gunpowder burns on the skin, which only occurs when a gun is fired at extremely close range. In a drive-by, that proximity between a weapon and the victim's skin is physically impossible. Melly's defense attorney, who was part of the first trial team, was candid about the state of the evidence.
The shootings from the outside in, they did hit the bodies, but it's been shown that the bodies were already dead.
Dead before the shots that were supposed to represent the drive-by were even fired, meaning the staged drive-by was exactly that, a staging fired into already deceased bodies to manufacture a story.
You know, one of the bodies has stippling on the face, right? And stippling is what you get. It's basically just gunpowder that burns the skin.
The defense team's argument in the first trial was built around creating reasonable doubt, not proving innocence, but showing the jury that the state had not met its burden. And that strategy almost worked. 3 jurors held out. A mistrial was declared, but that was before Bortland flipped. Because here is what Bortland's cooperation changes. As the driver in the vehicle during the alleged shootings, Bortland is a pivotal figure. His proffer, expected to include a sworn statement on Melly's actions, could directly corroborate forensic evidence and answer critical questions like Melly's position relative to the victims at the time of the shots. And since his case is resolved, since double jeopardy has now attached, he can no longer invoke the Fifth Amendment, making him subpoena-proof for the retrial. Attorney John Phillips, who represents one of the victims' families, laid out exactly what that means.
Phillips said if they subpoena him, he can no longer take the Fifth Amendment on these issues.
The implication is enormous. Before the plea, Bortland could sit on that witness stand and say nothing, could hide behind his Fifth Amendment rights, could protect himself, and in doing so create a wall of silence around Melly. That wall no longer exists, but...
Just ask, did Mr. Demons, that's Melly, ever leave that car? Was he sitting behind you at the time of the shooting?
And this is the part that Melly's supporters have been holding on to. There is still the question of motive. The prosecution has always struggled with the fundamental why. Why would Melly, in the middle of a period of rapid musical success, choose to kill 2 of his closest friends? Several theories have circulated. Melly's girlfriend was reportedly receiving explicit messages from Sackchaser. Financial disputes were alleged. The victims were reportedly earning more and beginning to distance themselves from the group. There were even rumors about gang elevation. The theory being that the murders were committed for advancement within the Shine Bloods. None of these theories have been definitively proven. And in the first trial, the absence of a clear, compelling motive was part of what kept 3 jurors unconvinced. The lead defense attorney from the first trial was careful to acknowledge both the strength and the limits of the state's case.
The prosecutor's case should look very strong. It should look extremely strong, like you were saying, because we haven't heard the other side.
That is the key qualifier. The defense hasn't fully shown its hand yet. Drew Find, the attorney who now represents Melly, the same attorney who represented NBA Youngboy through his federal case, is not a lawyer who walks into a courtroom unprepared. The strategy will evolve. Counter-arguments will be built, and the October 2025 appeals court ruling that upheld the exclusion of certain pre-murder text messages may have just handed the defense a meaningful advantage heading into January 2027. Now, what about the streets? What does the rap community actually believe is going to happen? The answer is it's complicated and it's increasingly divided. The hip-hop community has shown strong vocal support for Melly since 2019. Driven by his breakout music, his youth, Florida rap ties, and perceptions of prosecutorial overreach. #FreeMelly became a genuine movement, not a slogan, but a sustained campaign with real emotional weight behind it. Boozy Badass attended the 2023 trial and live tweeted support. Meek Mill visited Melly in jail and highlighted the conditions of his detention on social media and podcasts. Fans got Free Melly tattoos. Streams surged every time the case made headlines, but Bortland's plea changed the room temperature. Academics called it a gun plea. Lawyers called Bortland Chuck E. Cheese. Posts accused him of flipping to avoid life. Comments like Bortland bit the cheese flooded social media. And while core fans remained solidly in the Hashmiamp, neutral observers started shifting. Evidence is evidence. Forensics are forensics. And when the man who was in the car with you accepts a deal that requires him to tell prosecutors everything he knows, that is a different situation than the one that ended in a mistrial. Charleston White, who never minced words about this case, went on record saying what many were thinking.
But here it is, YNW, they think, man, he should be let go. Free Dirt, free Queso. These are killers. But I'm wrong for saying Gilly, son. Yeah. Now, I hope they get his kid life. I hope he never gets out of prison.
That is the polar opposite of where the hashtag #FreeMeMelly movement stands. And the fact that both of those positions, fierce loyalty and fierce condemnation, exist simultaneously, is a reminder that this case has always been about more than just the legal facts. It is about what we ask of young black men in this country. It is about the conditions that produce violence in communities that have been abandoned. It is about whether the justice system can be trusted to be fair to a 19-year-old kid from Ford, Florida, who had already been failed by almost every institution meant to protect him before any of this ever happened. Fans and observers drew comparisons to how long Melly had been held without conviction with posts like Melly been locked almost a decade with no conviction. That stopped going viral. Some compared his conditions to being worse than death row. And Meek Mill, someone who knows exactly what pre-trial and probation-related incarceration feels like, has been among the most vocal about the injustice of holding a man for this long without resolution. So where does everything stand right now? As of April 16, 2026, YNW Melly remains incarcerated in Broward County Jail. He has been held pre-trial since February 2019, over 7 years on double murder charges. No release has occurred. But on April 30, 2026 at 9:30 in the morning before Judge Martin S. Fine, arguments will be heard on whether Jamal Demons should be granted bond while awaiting his January 2027 retrial. His legal team will argue new evidence, dismiss charges, and conditions so severe they have called them dehumanizing. The state will argue that a man facing double first-degree murder charges in a capital case with forensic evidence linking him to the crime scene poses too great a risk to be released. And somewhere in Broward County, his mother already knows what she believes the answer is going to be. What happens on April 30th is not guaranteed. What happens in January 2027 is even less certain. But the trajectory of this case, the drop charges, the new legal team, the appeals court ruling, and yes, the shadow of Portland's cooperation means that the next 12 months may finally decide what happens to a young man who has spent more than a quarter of his life in a jail cell waiting to find out. Melly's career totals now exceed 10.7 billion streams. Murder on My Mind is approaching 1 billion. He is by every streaming metric one of the most listened to incarcerated artists in the history of the music industry. Whether he ever gets to make music as a free man again, whether any of what he built before February 2019 can be rebuilt depends entirely on what a judge decides in a Broward County courtroom. A mother posted 2 words. The internet exploded. And now all we can do is wait. Love this video. Click on the cards for